I'm going to have us start, of course, with the sponsors, and then we will go and cover as much text as we can.
Totally lost my place.
Okay. Year of Learning, Dr. Paul Koenigsberg, in memory of his brother, Dr. Sam Koenigsberg, Shimon Reuven ben Labish, and Ed Goldberg's cousin, Nisan Hara Nisan ben Fardosa. Paul and Bob Bromberg, in memory of their dear friend Julian Smith, Yehuda ben Yisrael. In memory of Malcolm Mann and her family murdered in the Holocaust, Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bet Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Many friends of Dr. Marvin Blush, Moshe Shalom ben Yitzchak Halevi, friends of Toby Paris, Sarah Tova bat Yisrael Dov, friends of Malka Levi, Malka bat Yosef, friends of Avi Gitler, Avram Meir ben Shimon, and Martha Gitler, China bas Yeshaya, Shel Shur, her children and grandchildren, in memory of her uncle, founding member of BRS, Dr. Israel Brook, Yisrael ben Arav Akiva, Marsha Federbush and family, in memory of her husband, Dr. Oriel Paul Federbush, Oriel Pinchas ben Arav Shimon, friends of Joe Wolf, Yosef ben Chaim, Sharon and Fred Lisker, their family and many friends, in memory of her dear mom, Harriet Friedman, Edelbas Yaakov. Okay, now a month of learning by Andrea and David Dolney, in memory of her mother, Edel Sinabat Shimshon, by friends of Bella Silverstein, Bela Bat Yaakov, and a month of learning in honor of all those who joined first series of epistemology of Tefillah, okay, and welcome to the second by Cheryl Schur. A week of learning by Ruth Kosman, in memory of her husband Shmuel ben Yitzchak, by Marcus and Alina Leha Shalom Tellerman, in memory of his mother-in-law Esther Bas Nachum. We have a day of learning. Today is the 24th. So we don't actually have anything more. That's for tomorrow. So may Shemas have an aliyah, crank or afir velti ashir shema taliyah, and lechol b'nei Yisrael a good geban shtiar. Okay. The Gemara. Okay. We left off with on the bottom of Bet Amud Beis, implied that there was an argument as to how to date documents, okay? And the implication is which one you really considered the, I don't want to say real Adar, but which one was dated Adar and which one was dated with a additional comment. And that's where the Breita said, basically there, Lomar Ela Hinhig. Okay, then it went on. The Inyan Shtarot, Kodvin Adar Rishon, Adar Sheni Stam. And Rabbi Yossi disagreed. He said, Omer Adar Rishon, Stam, that was simply, right? Okay, Adar Sheni Tanayan. Adar Sheni was the one that had the additional comment on it. Okay, and that's where we left off.
Right.
So on top of Gimel Amud Aleph is where we're picking up. Okay, and okay, we see the following: Metaknin et hadrachim. Our new piece from the Mishnah is listing those other, let's call it civil, so to speak, efforts. Okay. Infrastructure efforts, but they're going to be more than just that, that were to be, were announced and begun, okay, the following, Metaknin et hadrachim, that they would repair the main thoroughfares, ve'et rechovot, and the streets, ve'et mikvot hamayim, and the cisterns for water, ve'osin kol tzarchei harabim, and they would do all of the needs of the community, public needs. So the Gemara wants us to, first of all, to clarify what might some of these public needs be. Elu hein tzorchei harabim, things like the following. Okay? And as we list them, keep in mind that many of these things could have been done earlier, so to speak, in the year. But since Adar then was considered, in a sense, the last month of the year, they wanted to finish a number of these, tie up loose ends. I'll use that phrase. Legally, okay, to be able to start the next year. And so we see the following. Elu hein sarchei harabim, danin dinei mamonot. Okay, so there would be monetary cases, v'dinei nefashot, and there would be cases regarding corporal law. Right? Dinei makot, there would be cases in regards to punishment. Upodin arachin, okay, and there was valuations that had been made that people need to pay. So that was necessary. The charamim, okay, and then there were other kinds of items that had been dedicated, right? The hekdeshot, and other items that had clearly been specifically marked for the purpose of the Beis Hamikdash. Maybe it was for Bedek Habayit, and it need to be collected. Umashkin et hasota, okay, and if there was a woman that needed to be handled by the sota ritual, okay, given the drink, that had to be done and finished by then. The sorfin et hapara, okay, they would then also deal with the burning of the red heifer, the para aduma, right? V'orfin agla arufa, right? And if there had been situations where they had found a body between two communities and they needed to do the egla arufa, they would decapitate it then. V'rotzain eved ivri, and if a Hebrew servant opted to remain a servant, okay, his ear needed to be pierced, okay, they would do that, okay. Umitaharin et mitzorah, and anyone who was a mitzorah who had not had benefit yet of purification needed to have the water poured on them, assuming that they had done the other requirements, right? Umefarkin et hamanal me'al gabei hamayim, okay, and here, okay, they would unlock those cisterns, okay, that had gathered water during the rainy season, so that now as they move into the, so to speak, spring and summer, these cisterns of water would be available for people, okay? Ve'ein machzirin otan, and they would not continue to lock them up until the end of the summer season, okay? Tman taninan, there also we learned, there was another Mishnah, however, in Moed Katan, which remember that deals with the Chol HaMoed, okay? And that Mishnah chart as follows. Mashkin Beit HaShlachim, okay? That it's permissible to irrigate those fields that need irrigation. Umetzainin al hakvarot, and to mark the graves. Now this seems to be problematic because we said earlier that in our Mishnah that one of the things that was done for the public welfare was to mark graves. So we're going to see somewhat of an extensive discussion on this topic. Says the Gemara, all right? Lo kvar tziyanu ma'adar. But no, wasn't it that we already marked them back in Adar? So how can you say you mark it in Adar, but then you say during Chol HaMoed, you mark these graves, certain things again? How is that necessary? So the Gemara continues, Vati pater. So let us explain it this way. Sheyarad shetef shel gshamim v'shatfu, that there was an extensive rainfall sometime after the beginning or middle of Adar, and as a result, it could easily have washed away whatever markings, okay, that could have been on those uh, stones or grave sites, and therefore, as a result, then we have to mark them again during Chol HaMoed. Okay, let's go on. We continue, right? With the next piece in the Gemara, V'yotzin af al haklayim. Okay, it says that they go out, right? That they would have officials check the fields. And so the Gemara again wants us to understand this and asks the question, Lo kfar yatsu me Adar? Again, did they not already go out from Adar? Tipater. So let's explain it this way. Okay? Shahaita hashana afela, that the year was late. In other words, the way they calculated the year so that the new crops could not have sprouted yet, and therefore, ve'ein hatzmechin nikarim, we can't find that the sprouts were visible. Minayin, on what basis? Let's see on. So the Gemara asks another question. Why do we mark the graves? Okay. Rabbi Barachia says, Barabi Yaakov bar bat Yaakov, b'shem Rabbi Chunya, the Brit Chovyin. So Rabbi Barachia, in the name of Rabbi Yaakov, who is the son of Bas Yaakov, okay, in the name of Rabbi Chunya, from Chavrin, so this is Beit Chovrin, and others say it was Rabbi Yosef, Amrela Rabbi Yaakov bar Acha, b'shem Rabbi Chunya de Bras Chavrin, okay, namely, again, so we're citing different sources. Rabbi Chizkiah, another one, says it's somebody else. Rabbi Uziel, Berei de Rav Chunya, the Beis Chorin, b'shem Rabbi Chunya de Beis Chorin. Okay, so we have various examples. Okay, why do they mark? They say the graves, and they base it on the following idea. Okay, when we have a Metzorah, the Metzorah is supposed to, when they go around, to make a decree. V'tamei tamei yikra. Okay, they are supposed to be calling out that they are contaminated. Okay, why is that the case? Kadei shetehei hatumah koralach b'fiha v'omeret lach prosh. Why? So that the person who is tamei calls out, okay, and people understand, therefore, that they should keep away. Right? Now, Rabbi Ila is going to give a different suggestion why we mark the graves. Rabbi Ila b'shem Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachman, okay, gives a different example, right? And he's going to say, right, the following pasuk: Va'avru ha'ovrim be'eretz re'e etzem adam ubana etzlo tzion. Okay, citing a pasuk this time, okay, that comes from a different source, right? That the passers-by traverse the land, they see the bones of a person and put a marker on it, okay? And he darshans this pasuk, etzem, a bone, mikan shemetzainin al ha'atzamot. From here we see that it's necessary to put a marker on the bones. Adam, a person, mikan shemetzainin al hashidra v'hal gilgolet, that even if the backbone or the skull is in that location, one must mark where it's buried. Ubana, and built, mikan shemetzainin al gabe even kvua. And here we say that it's important to be able to mark it on an item, a stone that is a fixed stone, that it's attached to the area where the burial took place. Im omer at al gabe evan.
We lost our rabbi.
Got quiet all of a sudden.
It's the problem with the executive apartment.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the Wi-Fi modem is on the far end and the signal does not reach. He is off.
Actually, you lost him as a participant. There's
Oh,
only
yeah.
4 of us on.
Right.
He's
because-
not on.
Yeah, because he's trying to connect from his bedroom, the second bedroom, which is on the other end of the house away from the modem, and there's no Wi-Fi signal there. It's a very specific problem with the executive apartments.
Take a look at the participant. There's only 4 of us.
Right, exactly.
Marvin, Harvey, Steve, and Zev. That's it. No one else.
Correct.
Rabbi isn't connected.
No, he's not on.
No, he dropped off entirely.
That's why it got so quiet. I said, wait a minute, what happened? All of a sudden, the sound's gone, picture's gone, everything is gone.
I thought my hearing was gone.
No, Marvin. We would
You're
let you know.
blacked out, Harvey. Your video's off.
We would let you know right away.
Your video's off. You know that.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Okay, I'll put you back on.
There you go.
You finally got dressed?
I was just wearing a shirt.
No,
I
no.
got tired of seeing the fan go around on top of me.
Here he comes.
Where's Ev?
Here he comes.
There
Where
he
is he?
is.
Where is
Coming
Ev?
back on. There he is.
Where is Ev?
Oh, now Zeb's in the bottom there. Zeb's there, but his picture's not on.
Oh,
Rabbi, you're still muted.
Unmute.
Okay,
There we go.
technical glitch. All right,
Oh.
so he's darshaning that second pasuk. Okay, again, saying a detached rock, somebody would get tamei elsewhere. Etzlo by him lamakom tahara. Okay, it has to be therefore so that the person is aware of a pure place. Tziyun, okay, here the phrase tziyun, mikan letziyun. From here, that tells us why there has to be some sort of mark. So what they used to do is they used to put lime on a stone, and they used to pour something, okay, or if there were 2 stones, between. If one finds a single stone that's, let's call it designated or marked, afal pisha ein mekaymin kain, even though generally we're not going to do it that way, hamahil ale tamei. And if one leaned over that particular stone, implying that therefore they would become tameh. There was something buried underneath there. Ani omer, okay, so again, the Gemara tells us, okay, mate mitsuyan, okay, I'm saying that there was a dead body, a corpse found there, v'haya natun tachteha, and therefore there is something buried there underneath that stone. Okay. Now, the pasuk we had tells us a new statement. Hayu shtayim, let's say were two stones, okay? Hamahil alehen tahor, okay? In this case, the Braita tells us that the person who leaned over the two stones would be tahor, ubenehen tameh, okay? But that the grave was probably between the two. Okay, and furthermore, im hayach choresh beintayim, if somebody had plowed up the land between the two stones, harehen ki yechidot, that implies that the burial took place not between the two of them, but there are two separate burials. Each stone is over a separate grave, and therefore the area between them is acceptable. Beinehem tahor, usvivotehen tameh. Between them is tahor, and around them now is tameh. Okay? Now a new statement. Tane, it was taught. Ein mitzayin al habasar. We do not, however, mark a stone if only flesh was buried there. Why? Shema nitakel habasar, because it's possible that the flesh would decay, rot away, and therefore there would be nothing there. Rabbi Yustia Bar Shunan, okay, he now comes ba'e, kume Rabbi Mana. He asked a question, he wondered, and therefore had the problem with the following. V'lo nimtza metameh taharot l'mafreya. Isn't it a problem then that we wouldn't find somebody becoming, how can you say that they would become tahor? Wouldn't they eventually then still remain tameh after the fact? Because they had some contact? Amarle, Rabbi Mana responds, mutav sheyitkalkalu bo l'sha'ah va'al yitkalkalu bo le'olam. Better that he become impure for a short period of time, okay? And, okay, maybe he did come in contact with the area where the flesh was, but eventually he can become tahor by going through the proper procedure, rather than be in a situation that maybe he could have stopped there and eaten something, and therefore his food becomes tameh, and as a result, okay, has an extended period of tumah. Okay, we'll go now to a new halacha. Okay, you're going to give us a little different subject. Remember, they said that they sent out the temple officials to check on the fields if there were kalayim. Okay, and our initial Mishnah, okay, referred to the fact that in that situation, right, they basically indicated that what happened, v'yotzin af haklayim, at the end of the Mishnah, but it doesn't say further than that. So this second Mishnah is going to clarify that situation. Okay. Now, halacha bet matnitin, amar Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda is explaining the issue of let's call them the kalayim inspectors. Okay. Barishona, initially, hayu okrin umashlichin lifnehem. Those inspectors would pull up the inappropriate kalayim, and they would toss it in the front of the farmers. Okay. Now, Misharabu ovrei avera, since the number of transgressing farmers increased, hayu mashlichin l'drachim. Instead, they would throw it onto the roadway. Now, the problem is as follows, says this Mishnah. Hitkinu shahiyu mafkirin et kol hasadeh. And then ultimately they made a takana that they would make hefker the field. Now, why this long process to say they did this, then they did this, then eventually they had to do it another way? Okay. Amar Rabbi Yehuda v'chulei. We're now going to see that discussed and presented, explained in the Gemara. Okay. What happened? Tani, it was taught. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Barish Shona, hayu okrin umashlichin lefnehem. Okay. So our Mishnah is actually an abbreviated form of the following Braita by Rabbi Yehuda. Originally, they uprooted the sprouts, let's say, and they threw it in the front of the farmers. V'hayu smechin, and the farmers were happy for two reasons. Shtei smachot. Number one, echad shahayu menashchin stoteim, namely somebody else was weeding their fields. V'echad, and another reason, shahayu nehanin min haklayim, that they could still benefit from the climb because they could take that sprouts, that produce, and feed it to their animals. Okay, so what happens? Now the Braita continues. Misharabu ovrei avera, once the number of transgressors increased, hayu mashlichin al hadrachim, then the inspectors threw it on the roadways. Afal pikein, nevertheless, hayu smechin, the farmers were still happy. Shahayu menashchin stoteim, because somebody else was still weeding their fields, right? Hitkinu shahiyu mafkirin kol hasadeh kula, and therefore they established a takana that they would make their fields no longer their property by making it hefker. So the Gemara asks a reasonable question. Minayin shehefker beit din hefker. On what basis can we say that the Beis Din has the authority to declare something hefker, right? Dichtiv. Why? Because it's written, B'chol asher lo yavo l'shloshet hayamim ba'atzat hasarim, and deciding the pasuk here, that one who doesn't come within the 3 days to the gathering of the officers, v'hazkenim, and the elders, yecharam kol rechusho, then all his property will be put in cherem, okay, in let's say in a status of inviolability, okay. V'hu yibadel mikahal hagola, and he will be then separated from the basic community. Okay. Now the Gemara asks, Minayin shehi p'tura min hama'asrot, and how do we know then that this ownerless field is hefker, is exempt from maaser, from tithing? Rabbi Yonatan, Berei the Rav Yitzchak, tells us the following: Bar Acha, Shama la minhada. Okay, we learned this from one case. Ein ma'avrin et hashana lo b'shvi'it v'lo b'motzei shvi'it. We do not intercalate a year, okay, not on the year that it's a Shemitah year, okay, the 7th year, and not the year after a Shemitah year. V'imi bruha, and if they did intercalate the year, harei zo me'uberet, then it's considered a intercalated a leap year. Okay, v'chodesh echad shehu mosif, and the 1 month that they add lo patur mima'asro. That 1 month, are we saying that they're exempt from tithing? Okay, is that the situation? So the Gemara then answers us and says, Hu ad kan shvi'it. That's understandable. All right, ad kadun shvi'it, up to that point of the 7th year. Motzei shvi'it mai. But if they intercalated the year after shvi'it, what's the status then? So we see Amar Rabbi Abahu, Rabbi Bun, okay, the same person. Shelo l'rabot be'isur chadash, I'm sorry, that they should not increase the time, okay, when the new produce is prohibited. Okay? Now, Rabbi Zera, B'Shem Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Abahu, gives a different explanation. Hada da'at amar, that which you've said, ad shelo hitir Rabbi lahavi yerek michutza la'eretz. That explanation is valid only up to the time that Rebbe permitted produce, vegetables particularly, from outside the land of Israel, okay, into the land, okay? Aval mishahitir Rebbe lahavi yerek michutza la'eretz. But once Rebbe permitted vegetables, produce, greens to come in from outside the land, okay, into the land, okay. In other words, during the other years of the cycle, right? Hu shvi'it, all right. That could include the 7th year. He shall sha'ar shnei shavua. Okay, the other years of the 7-year cycle. Okay, in other words, one could still add the month, okay, and making it a additional leap year, okay, but still bring in produce from outside the country, not only that month, okay, but even throughout that year. Okay, let's go on to a new piece. Tani ein me'abri. We just said that generally one didn't intercalate the year. Okay? Amar Rabbi Mana, says Rabbi, Hada da'at Amar. Okay, so again, he's going to challenge this and say, this, what you've just said, Berishona shahayu hashanim ketiknan. That's a situation when the years were in their natural, regular order, okay? Right? Because it takes longer for the crops to grow and be ready, okay? And be edible after Nisan. Aval achshav she'ein hashanim ketiknan. But in a situation where the years aren't in their normal order, okay? He shvi'it, he sha'ar shnei shavua. Okay, then it becomes the issue of the sabbatical year, right, and therefore that throws off, okay, the use of the produce, right, and it should throw it off of the other years. Tani shel beit Rabban Gamliel, and therefore, okay, we see that a Braita was taught by the following house, the Academy of Rabban Gamliel, Ibruha b'motzei shvi'it miyad. Okay, what happens is that that year would end immediately at the end, and then the next year would be considered a different cycle. Now, Amar Rabbi Avin, Ein min hadat. Okay, his answer is that it's not possible to learn from that example. Lit at shma mina klum. You're not able to learn anything from that, derive it. Why? Because we have a pasuk, he says, that tells us Shamor et chodesh ha'aviv, to guard, to protect the month of the springtime. But springtime here refers to more than Nisan. It's the month where we say the produce begins to ripen. Shomrehu sheyava'o bechidusho. And therefore one should guard it, protect it, so that it's going to be ripening in the appropriate time of the year. Okay. So the Gemara then raises another example, okay, and raises the question, V'haida, okay, but with regards to this, okay, item, Amre da, we can say the following, right? Gadish, let's say we have a pile, okay, Shalo lukat tachtav, and underneath this pile was a certain amount of produce that had not been tithed whatsoever. Okay, what's the situation? Kol hanogod ba'aretz harehen shel aniyim. Any of that produce that's underneath that pile automatically should be considered belonging to the poor. Okay, V'amar Rav Ami, and Rav Ami then said, as we go over, B'Shem Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, in the name of Reish Lakish, right? Namely, the Beit Shammai, that ruling actually is the ruling of the school of Beit Shammai. De'ika Beit Hillel, Aniyim Ochlim U'Ma'asrim, because were it to be the ruling of the Academy of Beit Hillel, those poor people could only eat that produce on the condition that they also tithed it as well. Okay? Now, what happens? Okay, a new statement in the Gemara to respond. V'amar le Rabbi Yossi. Says Rabbi Yossi the following. Shamanu shahu patur mima'aser. Okay, divrei hakol mishum kansa. Okay, Rabbi Yossi says we learned, okay, that this idea of gathering, right, of leket, okay, from this would be exempt from tithing, because tithing in that situation is basically a penalty that the court imposes on the owner for not having done it and allowing that pile of whatever to lie on top of it. Okay, we now finished that particular halacha, that Mishnah, and we go to another one, okay, a third one, okay, and this one is going to tell us, again, relating back to something we saw in the very first Mishnah. Remember, it said there that on the 15th of the month of Adar was when they read the Megillah in the walled cities. Okay? Now, that wasn't the only situation, okay, that occurred as of the 15th of the month of Adar, because remember it said fros, okay, half, in other words, 15 days before Nisan, they needed to actually start the collection of the shkalim. The announcement was made as of the 1st of Adar, but actual, what do you want to call it, tax collectors set up their offices, okay, and that's what we're going to see. B'chamisha asar bo, on the 15th of the month, shulchanot hayu yoshvin b'medina. The tax collectors, the money changers, okay, would set up their, what we want to call their tables, in a sense, okay? They would, throughout the country, okay? Now, but Medina here could mean the provinces, the suburbs, the outlying districts, okay? But Kafhei, on the 25th of Adar, Yashvu b'mikdash. They actually set up their premises in the temple precincts. Okay, some want to explain that was in Yerushalayim, the city proper. Others say no, it was only on the Temple Mount. Misheyashvu b'mikdash. Once the tax collectors, let's call them, money changers, were set up in the 25th in the temple area, hitchilu lemishkan. Then they were able to collect collateral from people in order to require them to pay their chatzi shekel, their half shekel tax. Et mimam mashkani. So the Gemara asks, who then would be responsible to pay this collateral? Levi'im, Levites, V'Yisraelim, and Israelites, V'Gerim, new converts, V'Avadim Meshuchrarim, and freed servants. All of them, as males, have the obligation to pay the machatzita shekel, the half shekel tax. Aval lo nashim, but not women. Women were exempt. Okay, some want to argue because they thought, well, maybe one would say this is a time-bound mitzvah. Okay, others want to say no, they were exempt because the pasuk only refers to males. Okay, va'avadim uktanim, and non-Jewish, non-Israelite servants and minors also were exempt. Okay. However, says the text, v'kol katan shehitchil aviv lishkol al yado, and any minor whose father began to pay a machatzita shekel for him, the half shekel tax, okay, shuv eino posek. Once you start paying the tax for the kid, you continue to pay the tax. Okay? Furthermore, says the Mishnah, ein mamshachin et hakohanim. We do not, however, demand collateral from kohanim mepnei darkei shalom, because of issues of peace. Okay? Now, what does that mean? Right? Amar Rabbi Yehuda, as we continue. Ha'id ben Bukhri b'Yavne. That Ben Bukhri, says Rabbi Yehuda, once gave testimony in Yavne. Kol kohen sheshokel, okay, eino chote. Any kohen who does pay the tax is not sinning. Amar lo, okay, says Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, no, that's not the case. Ki, why? Because this is the issue. Ela kol kohen she'eino shokel. Rather, any kohen who does not pay the tax, chote, is committing a sin. Ela she'hakohanim dorshim mikra ze la'atzmam. But rather the kohanim would expound a verse to their own benefit, namely, right, if we say that the money from these shkalim go to pay for the general korbanot, many of which are atonement offerings, but other offerings as well, the kohanim can cite the following pasuk: B'chol minchat kohen klil tihiyeh lo tochal ho'il v'omed u'shtei halechem v'lechem apanim shalanu hem he'ach ne'achalim. If all these mincha offerings, okay, are to be eaten by the kohanim, okay, and other offerings like the shtei halechem, right, the two loaves on Shmini on Shavuot, and lechem apanim, the weekly loaves for Shabbos. How are they to be eaten by kohanim if you say that the Kohanim have to pay for them, what's the benefit? So the Gemara now comes back and tells us the following. Ein memashkinen et ketani. We do not demand collateral from minors. Ha litboa tovain. But if one wants to bring a court case, okay, and challenge, one can do that. Hada detema. Here, though, there you might say, b'shehevi shtei sa'arot. This is only a situation where the minor shows some signs of physical maturity. Aval im lo hevi shtei sa'arot. If he doesn't show signs of physical maturity, lo. That's not the case. Lo b'da. That's not the situation here. Ula mishkan. And as far as the collateral, ein memashkani, we don't collect collateral. Ad sheyavi shtei se'erot, we saw. Afal pi shehevi shtei se'erot. Perhaps even if he does have some signs of maturity. Keni matnitin. And thus we teach our Mishnah, ein memashkinin et kohanim. Likewise, we also teach that we do not collect collateral from Kohanim, mipnei derech hakavod, because of a sense of respect for them. And that's similar to what our Mishnah said earlier, darkei shalom. Okay? Now, elsewhere, we have another statement now. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, He'id. It said Rabbi Yehuda gave testimony. Okay? Amar Rabbi Barachia, he says as follows. Tama de Rabbi Yochanan, okay? We said here, right, that the reasoning of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was what? That a pasuk said, Ze yitnu, this they will give. Yud bet shvatim yitnu. This implies that all 12 tribes needed to give the machatzita shekel when the Mishkan was established. If that's the case, that includes the tribe of Levi, and Levi is the tribe that include the Kohanim, and therefore Kohanim should give. Rabbi Tavi, b'shem Rav Himnuna, okay, Kain Meshivin Chachamim, the Rabbi Yochanan, that the sages, however, gave a different following response to Rabbi Yochanan's claim. Chatat Yachid Meta. When you have a chatas of an individual and it got lost, and you have to bring a replacement, and then you find the original animal, what do? You have to lock it up and allow it to die on its own. However, ein chatat sibur meta. But we don't do the same for a chatas offering of the community. Furthermore, minchat hayachid kreva klal, that a mincha offering of an individual is brought in general. Ve'ein minchat hatzibur kreva klil. But on the other hand, the mincha offering, okay, of the community, okay, is not brought in that same situation. Vakasha, and indeed, this seems problematic. Meshivin la'adam davar she'eno modebo. Do we return to somebody something that does not really agree, does not really belong to them? Okay. Ditnan, as we're taught elsewhere, she'en chatat sibur meta, says that the sin offering of the community is not put out to die, right? Rabbi Yehuda Omer tamut, whereas on the other hand, Rabbi Yehuda said it should be put to death, allowed to die. Vehu motiv lan, okay? And Rabbi Yehuda himself brings an answer. Zo, when it says this, okay, lo nadaft yachidhi, okay, we're saying, isn't this the gift, the donation of an individual? Ve'inan mativin le, okay, and the sages then can respond to him and say, Kevan shenim tzara letzibur, since the half shekels are given over for the welfare of the entire community, Kemi shehu nadvat tzibur, it's as like they also are giving to a communal situation, conveyed for the public. Okay. Now, what happens? We see the following. Kativ, also, it's written in a pasuk, Kol ha'over al ha'pikudim, okay, that the pasuk, right, tells us anyone who passes the census. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Nehemiah, okay, the two of them have a machloket here on how to understand the pasuk. Chad amar kol da'avar biyama yetum. One basically says anyone who passed through the Red Sea, okay, has to give. The Charna, and the other one, okay, argues, Amar kol da'avar al pikudaya yitain. No, it's only those who were included and counted in the census have to give. Man da'amar kol da'avar biyama yitain. According to the one who said whoever passed through the sea has to give, Misayeh Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, seems to support the view that we saw of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Man da'amar kol da'avar al pikudaye yite. One who said that it has to pass through the census has to give the shekel, Misayeh ben Bukhri. He seems to support the view of Ben Bukhri, okay, that Kohanim do not have to give. And we're going to stop there, okay, today, all right, and we'll pick up tomorrow's text is a little bit shorter, okay, and hopefully a little less complicated as well, because it sometimes deals with items that we've already